What you just saw was a series of screenshots of individuals from the PT Discord server saying that the game is void of skill. Well, I'm here to accomplish 3 things. The first one is to disprove the absurd statement that the game takes no skill. The second is to discuss in depth how skill is measured in this game. And the last is to show you, the viewer, a clear picture on how to view the game when it comes to skill. Alright, before I get into what skill is in Kaiju Universe, let's first look at why would someone say that the game takes no skill. Well, when someone says that the game takes no skill, the first thought that comes to my mind is, well, maybe they just suck. More likely than not, when someone said that the game needs no skill, is that they either A, died to an endgame kaiju, B, died to a sky camper, or C, they died in a fair fight and now they are coping. In my experience, C is the more likely answer. I have been in the skill community of Kaiju Universe since like mid-2023. That's almost 3 years, so I hope that information will serve to the credibility of my following statements. To start off, well, what is skill? Skill by definition is simply the ability to do something well. Before I discuss how the Kaiju Universe needs skill, let me go over what I and many others use to measure skill, that being matchups. If you don't already know matchups, they're a fairly simple concept to understand. To summarize, matchups are when 2 separate kaijus, they do a 1v1, typically on Atlas, without the use of water, and it's usually first to 3 or sometimes 5. This is primarily used to measure rankings, but it can and it typically is used to figure out a kaiju skill ceiling. Now, before we discuss skill, let me clarify the difference between basic competence and skill because they can be confusing. Say a Morkage and a Zaratan 1v1. Who would you think would win in this scenario? Morkage, right? Well, what if the Zaratan won? Let's say that. You might then say, wow, that Zaratan is pretty skilled for beating an endgame kaiju. You would be wrong. More often than not, if a Morkage loses to a Zaratan, it would mean that the Morkage is simply incompetent, not necessarily that the Zaratan is skilled. More often than not, when a powerful kaiju loses to something that is somewhat lower tier, it doesn't necessarily entail that the lower kaiju is skilled, and more often than not, it's just that the endgame kaiju is bad. In summary, basic competence is the skill floor. Beating a Zaratan as Morkage doesn't mean you're skilled, it just means you are competent. However, if you were to beat something like Cleric or Incineros, then you would be considered skilled because those are debatable matches for Morkage. The hardest matchup for Kaiju will always be the skill ceiling. Now, you understand what skill ceiling and skill floor mean, or at least how I will use their terms in this video. There is in fact a difference between a skilled player and a skilled kaiju. The difference being that the skilled kaiju just means the skill ceiling for mastery is high, while a skilled player is one who can beat several difficult matchups using said kaiju. Like we discussed previously. However, due to Morkage's low skill ceiling and skill floor, I will use a better example. Cleric. Cleric can be both a skilled kaiju and it is used to its fullest potential by a skilled player. A skilled kaiju will be the hardest to master. Its kit. Now, there's no way to accurately measure a skilled kaiju, so we often base it off the complexity of its kit. Cleric's kit is evolved of a low HP, high-speed striker with a very unique charge system called stamina, where you can use rapid attacks, but they will take a decent amount of stamina, and you do not regain stamina passively like you do with charge. Instead, you need to wait a few seconds of not using abilities, and then your stamina will rapidly increase. This, paired with your below average HP and then low damage attacks, makes Cleric's kit something truly difficult to master. You can use a 1v1 example to measure if a Cleric is a skilled kaiju, but those are not accurate as measuring a player, so I will not do that. If you played Kaiju Universe, you probably already know the Cleric is very difficult to master, so I won't bother explaining to the newbies watching this video. Ask an experienced player. For the player, however, Cleric's skill ceiling is undoubtedly high, ranging from kaijus as low as Goliath, Able Cross Foodon, it can go up to Incineros, Sakura, and for the best of the best, Morkage. I would show you footage of this comparing an unskilled cleric to a skilled cleric, but I was unable to find an unskilled cleric in the making of this video, so instead I will use another example to demonstrate a kaiju skill ceiling. that being Zaratan versus Malicive. One might assume that Zaratan wins this fight, and rightfully so. Zaratan has high HP, it has good damage, it has very solid grounding capabilities. Well, I'm here to tell you that this is not the case. Malicive absolutely walks the floor with Zaratan, as would be displayed in the following footage. First, however, I will play one of the many fights that an unskilled Malicive recorded, sped up for your convenience. Here we have our first of many mistakes from Trigger here. As you can see, he landed on the ground while the Zartan was really not that far away from him, and he proceeds to beam. Let's see how that works out for him. Here we have mistake number 2. Trigger uses a 4 with the intention of dealing quick damage and knocking Zaratan back, clearly with the intention to escape. But his mistake here is that he uses a 3, a move that slows you down. Obviously, he was trying to range, but he didn't account for me countering his A3 with the stomp. If he had simply flown away, he could have avoided the 800 damage attack, considering the attack has a decent startup. Instead, he ends up taking upwards of 800 damage that could have so easily been avoided. And now we have a repeat of mistake number 1, only this one is more brutal. Not only does he land somewhat near Zaratan to beam, when he could have just beamed from the terrain which he was on, Trigger now gets hit by the spit, which grounds him. I would like to make a disclaimer real quick. I know that I've said many times that this is an unskilled gigan, or Malicive, or whatever. He's not unskilled, okay? Trigger's not unskilled. He was noted for his gigan skills in old KU, and he stopped playing after new KU until very recently. He's way out of his prime. He's not used to new... He's somewhat used to new gigan. He's not as used to the old playstyle, so he plays a little bit differently. He's somewhat skilled. I say he's more skilled than most of the Gigans that I see today. The issue is he doesn't really know Zartan's kit too much. He's played with Zaratan for quite a bit, but he's really the only Gigan that I could really find for this video other than myself. So I just like to put that disclaimer out there. He's not too skilled, but he's credible enough to, you know, for this video. Now that we're done with the unskilled Malicive, let me show you what a Malicive should do in this situation. Here is the first positive on what I did right. Not only did I beam from a good distance enough to avoid the spit and make the possibility of grounding with A5 impossible, I also used my teleport and A4 to out-trade Zaratan and make a quick escape, as you will see in just a second. Another thing I did here good was I used my A4 to use the knockback and to avoid A5, although ideally I would not get hit by A5, but this is still a very fair trade, and even though I got grounded, it still prevents him from dealing any further damage, unless he were to land Spit, which you will see in just a second, he does not. Not to be someone who makes a lot of excuses, but this is not the most ideal fight for Malciv versus Zaratan in the context of me telling you what the Malciv did right. We both make lots of mistakes in this video that could have costed either of us the win, but a quick disclaimer. Although I strongly believe that Bazada is the best Zaratan out there, we do live on opposite regions, and when I fought him on his region, I in fact did not win. So the fights for now go either way depending on region. This recorded fight was on my region, and although I am a bit rusty with Gigan, I have beaten him on his region in the past. This is the most ideal fight for now, and the game logic mostly applies here. Now, to summarize everything that I've covered in this video, you should have learned the difference between skill and competence, the definitions of skill ceiling and skill floor, and you should have a good idea on how skill is measured in Kaiju Universe, and a good idea on how the game does in fact need skill. However, Zaratan versus Malciv is not the strongest option to prove that the game needs skill, nor is it the last matchup that I will cover. Unfortunately, the spectrum of skill in KU is not limited to these kaijus. I plan to make 3 more videos diving deep into the spectrum and the range of skill, particularly focusing on endgame kaijus, flyers, and swimmers, and discover how, or how they don't, need skill. But for now, from this video, you should get a basic understanding of the game and why the claim that KU does not need skill is nothing but a myth.